Welcome to English Chapter. Today, you will hear a true story in simple English. It's the story of a man who failed many times, but built a dream for the whole world. This is the story of Walt Disney. Let's begin. Walt Disney was not born a genius. He didn't come from a rich family. He didn't live in a big city. He didn't have special connections or support. He was just a boy with a pencil, a big imagination, and a dream. Walter Elias Disney was born on December 5, 1901, in Chicago, Illinois. His father, Elias Disney, was a strict man. He moved the family often, looking for better work. His mother, Flora, was gentle, kind, and creative. Walt was the fourth of 5 children. When Walt was very young, his family moved to a farm in Marceline, Missouri. Marceline would shape his soul. There were cows, chickens, orchards, and dusty fields. There was space to dream, and for Walt, it felt like magic. Walt wasn't a great student. He didn't love math or science, but he loved to draw. He would copy animals from books. He would sketch the faces of his neighbors. Sometimes he would even draw on the barn walls, until his father found out. One day, a neighbor paid young Walt a few coins to draw his horse. That moment stuck with him. For the first time, Walt saw that his drawings had value. In 1911, the Disney family moved to Kansas City. Life was not easy. Elias bought a newspaper delivery route. Every morning, before the sun came up, Walt and his brother Roy had to deliver hundreds of papers. Rain, snow, freezing cold, it didn't matter. They worked hard, and they were always tired. At school, Walt often fell asleep in class. But when he was awake, he was drawing. His notebooks were full of cartoons. Funny faces, silly animals, scenes from his own imagination. He also discovered theater and movies, silent films that lit up the screen with music and movement. His heart was moving towards storytelling. In 1918, Walt wanted to fight in World War I, but he was too young, only 16. So he lied about his age and joined the Red Cross as an ambulance driver. He was sent to France after the war had ended. There he drove officers, delivered food, and helped in hospitals. But he also decorated his ambulance with cartoons. He drew funny scenes for the soldiers. He made friends with pencils and jokes. He was a soldier and an artist. When he returned to the U.S. in 1919, he was ready to try something bold, make a living from his drawings. Back in Kansas City, Walt worked at a commercial art studio. He made advertisements, little drawings for newspapers and shop windows. It wasn't exciting, but it was a start. That job didn't last long, but he met a young artist there, Ub Iwerks. Ub was quiet, serious, and extremely talented. Walt was imaginative, energetic, and full of ideas. They became partners. Together, they got work at a film studio called Kansas City Film Ad Company, where they created simple animated ads. Walt became fascinated by animation. At night, he read everything he could about cartoons and film. He borrowed a camera. He built a small animation stand in his garage. And in 1922, he took his first leap. Walt opened his own company, Laugh-O-Gram Studios. It was a bold move. He hired a small team, including Ub Iwerks, and started creating short fairy tale cartoons. They were fun, creative, and ahead of their time. But Walt didn't understand business yet. He spent too much. He trusted the wrong people, and the money ran out fast. Laugh-O-Gram Studios failed. At just 21 years old, Walt was broke. He had no company, no team, no success, but he still had hope. With $40, one suitcase, and a reel of his best cartoon work, Walt boarded a train to Los Angeles. It was 1923. He was 22 years old. He dreamed of becoming a live-action film director. But nobody in Hollywood wanted to hire him. So Walt pivoted. He wrote a letter to his brother Roy, who was recovering from tuberculosis in a veterans hospital. "Let's start a company," he said. "We'll make cartoons." Roy agreed. Together, they opened a small office in the back of a real estate office. They called it the Disney Brothers Studio. Walt's first big idea was the Alice comedies, a mix of live action and animation. A young girl acted in front of cartoon backgrounds. It was fresh, fun, and totally new. They found a distributor in New York. The cartoons were a modest success. Walt was finally in business. He moved his family to California. He hired more animators, and he worked non-stop. But as he grew, so did the pressure. He wanted more than just small cartoons. He wanted a character people would love, someone full of life, heart, and fun. And in 1927, he found it. Walt and his team created Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Oswald was energetic, clever, and full of personality. Audiences loved him. Disney signed a distribution deal with Universal Pictures. The cartoons were popular. Walt thought he was finally secure. But business can be cruel. In 1928, when Walt went to New York to negotiate for more money, he was shocked. The studio had taken Oswald and most of his animators. Walt had signed away the rights without realizing it. He had lost everything. Again. He was devastated. He took the train back to California in silence. But on that train ride, something magical happened. Walt had lost his rabbit, so he imagined something new. A small, funny, clever mouse. His name was Mickey. Walt's wife, Lillian, almost said no. She didn't like the name, but Walt was sure Mickey was the future. Walt and UB Iwerks worked hard to bring Mickey to life. They made a short, silent film called Plain Crazy, but no one picked it up. Then they made a second film, Steamboat Willie, this time with sound. That changed everything. Walt Disney sat on a train heading back to California. He had just lost his most popular character, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. His animators were gone. His trust was broken. His studio was at risk. But he wasn't finished. That train ride gave him something else. A new idea, a new character, a new start. His name was Mickey. Back in California, Walt and UB Iwerks went to work. Walt described Mickey as fun, bold, smart, and a little mischievous. UB drew hundreds of sketches until Mickey looked just right. Walt even gave Mickey his own voice. Literally, he recorded it himself. Their first Mickey cartoon was called Plain Crazy. It was shown as a test. Audiences liked it, but there was no sound, and sound was about to change everything. In 1928, they made a second cartoon, Steamboat Willie. This time it had sound. Mickey whistled, danced, and moved with the music. It was electric. Audiences had never seen a cartoon like that before. It was funny. It was alive. It was fresh. Mickey Mouse was a star. Mickey Mouse wasn't just a cartoon. He became a symbol of joy, of fun, of childhood. People wore Mickey pins. Kids carried Mickey toys. Mickey appeared in comic strips, coloring books, and even on watches. In just a few years, Walt Disney went from nearly broke to national success. But he didn't stop at Mickey. He wanted a world of characters, a world of stories. So he introduced new friends: Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, Goofy, Pluto. Each had their own voice, personality, and charm. Audiences fell in love again and again. By 1930, Walt Disney Studios had grown. It wasn't just a team of animators anymore. It was a full business, with writers, sound engineers, background artists, and musicians. Walt built a new studio space in Hollywood. It was modern. It was clean. It was focused on quality. Walt believed animation could be more than short, funny cartoons. He believed it could be art, but he knew it would be hard. In 1934, Walt made a bold announcement. He would make the first full-length animated feature film. It would be based on the fairy tale, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. People laughed. They called it Disney's folly. Even some of his team didn't believe it was possible. How could a cartoon hold people's attention for over an hour? Walt ignored the noise. He spent years working on Snow White. He pushed the limits of animation, with color, movement, music, emotion. And he spent everything. He borrowed money. He worked through the nights. His health began to suffer. His studio nearly went bankrupt. But in 1937, the film was ready. On December 21, 1937, Snow White premiered at the Cathay Circle Theater in Los Angeles. Hollywood's biggest stars came to see it. And when the movie ended, there was silence. Then, thunderous applause. People were crying, smiling, cheering. Snow White was a masterpiece. It was emotional, beautiful, and unforgettable. The film earned millions of dollars and won Walt an honorary Academy Award and 7 tiny Oscars to represent the dwarfs. Walt Disney had taken the biggest risk of his life, and it worked. After Snow White, Walt wanted to keep pushing animation forward. He didn't want to repeat old ideas. He wanted to go bigger. He created Pinocchio, 1940, A Wooden Boy Who Wants to Be Real. Fantasia, 1940, music and magic combined in art. Dumbo, 1941, A Little Elephant Who Could Fly. Bambi, 1942, a quiet, emotional story about nature and growing up. Each film was different. Each film was risky. Some were hits. Some lost money. But each one showed Walt's belief. Animation could move people, make them laugh, cry, and think. Success didn't mean peace. The Disney studio grew fast, but not everyone was happy. In 1941, a group of animators went on strike. They wanted better pay, more credit, and union support. Walt was shocked and heartbroken. He saw the studio as a family. The strike showed him that not everyone felt the same. It lasted 5 weeks. After that, something in Walt changed. He became more private, more guarded, but he never stopped building. During World War II, the studio shifted focus. They made training films for the military. They produced educational cartoons. They created propaganda to support the war. It wasn't exciting work, but it kept the studio alive. And when the war ended, Walt was ready for a new dream. Walt had built a company. He had changed animation. He had become a household name. But he wasn't satisfied. He wanted to build a place. Not a movie, not a cartoon. A place. A place where families could come together. A place full of joy, magic, and adventure. Walt dreamed of Disneyland. But everyone told him the same thing they always had. It's impossible. In the early 1950s, Walt Disney was already a legend. He had changed animation. He had built a studio. He had made movies that touched hearts around the world. But Walt wasn't done. He had one more dream, and it was bigger than anything he had ever done before. It started with a simple thought. Walt was at the park with his daughters. They were riding a carousel. He sat on a bench, eating peanuts. He looked around and thought, there should be a place where parents and children can have fun together. Not just a park, not just rides. A world, a story, a place full of wonder. Walt imagined a place where movies came to life, where visitors could walk into a fairy tale, a jungle, a western town, or even the future. He called it Disneyland. Walt shared his idea with business people. Most of them laughed. Theme parks were dirty, noisy, and dangerous. They thought it would fail. Banks didn't want to invest. Even Roy Disney, Walt's brother, was worried. "You'll ruin everything we built," he said. But Walt didn't care. He started drawing. He started planning. He started believing. Walt needed money, a lot of money. And he had a clever idea. Television was growing fast. So Walt made a deal with a TV network called ABC. If they gave him money, he would give them a weekly TV show. The show would be called Disneyland, and it would show cartoons, behind-the-scenes footage, and a look into the future park. The deal worked. Walt got the money, and he used every dollar to build his dream. Construction began in Anaheim, California, in 1954. The land was just orange groves and dirt roads. But Walt saw castles, trains, and magic. He worked day and night. He walked the site. He gave notes. He solved problems. He was involved in every detail, from ride design to trash cans. He created lands. Main Street, USA, a small-town street like the one he remembered from Marceline. Adventureland, full of jungles, animals, and exploration. Frontierland, the Wild West with cowboys and rivers. Fantasyland, castles, flying elephants, and fairy tales. Tomorrowland, rockets, robots, and the future. He called it the most wonderful place in the world. On July 17th, 1955, Disneyland. But things did not go smoothly. The opening day was hot, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius. Fake tickets were sold. Plumbing wasn't finished. Rides broke down. Crowds were bigger than expected. Even the asphalt was still soft. Women's heels sank into the pavement. Some reporters called it Black Sunday. But the guests? They saw something magical. Despite the problems, people smiled. They laughed. They dreamed. And they came back. Within weeks, Disneyland became a success. Families traveled from across the country to see it. Children begged their parents to go. Adults rediscovered their imagination. Disneyland was clean, friendly, and organized, the opposite of most amusement parks. Walt walked the park often. He picked up trash. He listened to guests. He always wanted to improve. And he never stopped dreaming. While Disneyland grew, Walt continued making movies. His studio released Cinderella, 1950, Peter Pan, 1953, Lady and the Tramp, 1955, Sleeping Beauty, 1959, 101 Dalmatians, 1961. Each film had a new style, a new challenge, and a new piece of Walt's heart. He also started producing live-action films, like Treasure Island and Mary Poppins, which became a massive hit. Walt was now more than an animator. He was a storyteller in every form: film, TV, theme parks, and beyond. Walt loved the idea of tomorrow. He believed in science, technology, and progress. He thought cities could be cleaner, smarter, and kinder. So he started working on something called Epcot, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. It wouldn't be just a park. It would be a real city, where people could live and work using the best new ideas. Walt made detailed plans. He shared them with the world, but he would never see it built. In 1966, Walt Disney was diagnosed with lung cancer. He had smoked for most of his life. The news came fast and hit hard. Still, Walt kept working. He sketched ideas from his hospital bed. He held meetings. He talked about Epcot. He kept dreaming. On December 15, 1966, just 10 days after his 65th birthday, Walt Disney died. The world stopped. People around the globe mourned. He was more than a filmmaker. He was a builder of dreams. He gave us a mouse. He gave us fairy tales. He gave us places where imagination still lives. Walt Disney had no college degree. He had no rich family. He failed many times, but he kept moving forward. He believed that anything was possible if you had the courage to start. After Walt's death, many people asked the same question: can Disney survive without Walt? Walt had been the dreamer, the leader, the spark. He had made most of the big decisions. Without him, could the company keep going? His brother, Roy O. Disney, answered that question quickly. He came out of semi-retirement to lead the company one last time, and he had a promise to keep. Before Walt died, he had started planning a new project in Florida, a second theme park, a bigger dream. He called it Disney World, and it was meant to be more than a park. It would include a resort, hotels, and something brand new: Epcot, the city of the future. After Walt's death, Roy took the plans and moved forward. He renamed the project Walt Disney World, so no one would forget who started it. On October 1, 1971, Walt Disney World opened near Orlando, Florida. Roy stood before the crowd and said, "Walt Disney World is a tribute to the philosophy and life of Walter Elias Disney." 2 months later, Roy passed away, but the dream was alive. The 1970s and early 1980s were difficult. Without Walt, Disney struggled creatively. Some films did okay, like The Fox and the Hound and The Rescuers, but others didn't connect with audiences. Then in the late 1980s and early 1990s, something amazing happened: a Disney comeback. This era became known as the Disney Renaissance. Films like The Little Mermaid, 1989, Beauty and the Beast, 1991, Aladdin, 1992, The Lion King, 1994, brought Disney back to the top of animation. These movies were filled with music, emotion, and magic, just like Walt's early films. Disney continued to grow across the globe. Disneyland Paris opened in 1992. Hong Kong Disneyland opened in 2005. Shanghai Disneyland opened in 2016. Today, Disney owns some of the most powerful brands in entertainment. From Spider-Man to Star Wars to The Simpsons, Walt Disney's life is full of lessons, not from what he said, but from what he did. He was told no over and over. He was fired. He was copied. He was laughed at, but he never gave up. He said, "The difference in winning and losing is most often not quitting." Walt believed in hard work, in imagination, in taking risks, even when no one believed in him, and in giving people something that made them smile. Walt Disney didn't just build a company. He built a world where animals talk, castles glow, dreams feel possible, and people of all ages can believe in magic again. He once said, "It's kind of fun to do the impossible." And he did, not because he was perfect, not because he was lucky, but because he believed, worked hard, and kept moving forward. That's what makes him unforgettable. And that was the story of Walt Disney, a man who turned drawings into dreams, and dreams into a world we can all enjoy. If this story inspired you and helped you learn English today, Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss another story from English Chapter. We share true stories that help you grow your English and your confidence one chapter at a time. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.